Hey, Tyson,
Yeah, Mike.
my villain can beat up your villain.
Oh, please. I don't believe you.
I can prove it.
Hey, listeners. My name is Tyson,
And I'm Mike.
and we are arguing with dragons coming at you with a lightning round. Mike, what do you got for me in this lightning round?
In this particular lightning round, I'm going to convince you, and I say that with all the gusto in the universe, that Dagoth Ur is the greatest fantasy villain.
Dagoth Ur? What is this, a Star Wars guy or something? Or
Morrowind, sir.
oh God. All right, Mike has 14 minutes now to convince me that this is the best fantasy villain. And Mike, you go ahead. You go ahead and try. Try a little.
Alrighty, that works perfectly fine. Alrighty. Now, I think Dagoth Ur is the greatest villain in fantasy, and the reason is almost nothing to do with how powerful he is. Mind you, he is extremely powerful, but that's not what makes him great, in my opinion. Now, fantasy is just chock full of incredible villains. We got Sauron, the embodiment of absolute tyranny. We got Ganon, the raw ambition and destruction of a kingdom in pursuit of just being the strongest. You got Griffith from Berserk, pursuit of a dream at any cost. Yujiro Hanma represents strength without absolute morality. And they're all fantastic, don't get me wrong. But Dagoth Ur is something almost no other villain is. He does something no other villain does.
What's
I
that?
want you to take a wild guess. I want you to just pull something out of your ass and tell me what you think it might be.
What does he do that no other villain does?
Yes,
He wins.
you will not get it correct.
He wins.
More, what is he trying to do that no other villain is
Okay.
trying to do?
What is he trying to do? He is trying to plant a tree. I don't know, Mike. I've never
He's
played.
trying to save the world.
Oh, well, how is he the villain then?
I know it sounds ridiculous until you understand who he was and how the saving the world actually folds into
Well,
what he's doing.
Thanos thought he was saving the universe.
Well, that's true. However, Thanos was doing it unfairly.
Well,
Dagoth
no,
Ur
not in his eyes. Not in his
well,
eyes.
no. The
Yep.
unfairness in that he was eliminating people.
We
Whereas,
we talked about villains a little bit when we talked to Matt Carson about his book.
yes, we
And
did.
he had a very good point. Villains oftentimes are the heroes of their own story.
Yes, and Dagoth
So,
Ur encapsulates that perfectly.
okay, go ahead and continue
So
your spiel.
let me get a little bit into the history. Now,
Okay.
long before the actual events of the game, Dagoth Ur was known as Vorin Dagoth, a powerful lord of an ancient Morrowind house. House, in this case, being like a clan, basically, of dark elves. Now, he was also one of the closest allies of legendary hero Indoril Nerevar, who basically led all of the houses. He was what was called the Great Hortator. He led all the houses as a single unit. Now, during the Great War, Nerevar entrusted Vorin Dagoth with guarding the Heart of Lorcan, divine artifact of granting godlike powers, capable of granting godlike powers. Now, after that war, Nerevar's closest companions, Vivek, Amalexia, and Sothisil, later known as the Living Tribunal, used that heart to become living gods. Whether they murdered Nerevar or merely betrayed him depends on who you believe. But what isn't in dispute is that they took divine power for themselves and built an entire civilization on a lie. Dagoth tried to stop them. Instead, they disappeared him. When he finally returned thousands of years later, he wasn't really a man anymore. His proximity to this still beating heart of a long dead creator god had transformed him into something completely immortal, completely divine, and profoundly broken. And that's where most fantasy villains would begin a revenge story. Dagoth Ur does not. Most villains want power because they want to rule. Dagoth Ur already has power. Most villains want revenge. Dagoth barely cares about revenge. Most villains want to burn everything down. Instead, Dagoth wants to build something new. He wants to overthrow the false gods, the tribunal. He wants to free Morrowind from foreign occupation, the Empire. He wants to restore his people to greatness, the old ways, and he wants to unite the world under a single divine consciousness where nobody suffers, nobody dies, and no one is ever alone again. If you've only heard that description, he'd almost sound like a hero, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous.
Oh
The
no,
problem
no,
is
no,
how he plans to do it.
no. So that just stop for a second. That last bit, bind everybody together as a combined consciousness to end pain and suffering. You know who also did that in fantasy?
Yeah,
The Borg in Star Trek.
yeah. I was going to say the Borg, but for some reason the name Unity came to mind.
Unity. No, you're thinking Rick and Morty, but
Yeah, same idea, but a lot
far
nicer.
from the truth. Not far from the
Yeah.
truth.
Now it is a hive mind to a T. Absolutely.
So let me guess.
No,
You wanted to do it through genocide?
no, not at all. He wants to spread a supernatural disease called corporus. Now, to everyone else, corporus is horrifying. It twists your body into grotesque shapes, destroys your mind, and eventually leaves you a shambling monster. But Dagoth doesn't see it that way. He believes it as a form of evolution because it grants immortality, it makes the sufferer immune to disease, it frees people from death entirely, and it links them into one divine family under him. When he looks at a corpus victim, he doesn't see someone he's tortured or corrupted. He's seeing someone who is becoming perfect. And that's how it makes him terrifying. He doesn't lie, he doesn't pretend. He genuinely believes every atrocity he commits is an act of mercy. Most villains know they're doing evil things. Dagoth thinks he's performing miracles, and the strangest part being that he almost never lies. When you do walk up to him, he gives an over the top villain speech as you would expect. However, very different. He welcomes you as a friend. He explains exactly what he's trying to accomplish, and he offers to let you join him, completely sincere. And that sincerity makes it so very unsettling. Now, I understand you've got your reticence here,
Yeah.
but
So let me start with my reticence, Mike. So first, how is this villain relatable to anybody?
well, I'm going to get into that here. I actually have a bit of my thesis written around that about how he's a mirror of the hero character.
Okay, but aside from
I'll
being like
get there.
the mirror of the hero, usually a villain needs to have a relatable, in my opinion at least, because villains, sometimes if they're a comic book villain, they don't really have to be all that relatable. But like as a reader or a player, you have to look at a villain and kind of understand where he's coming from to make him a good villain. Because most people, they like Darth Vader because he's deep and he was powerful and he was ruthless. But at the same time, you saw his story come out as to how he got that way. And he became kind of a sad, angry villain who was really, coping with loss. And that's relatable. And
Absolutely.
you see other villains, like my favorite villain, Grand Admiral Thrawn, uh,
Hmm.
is he's a stoic defender of his people, and he believes in order, and he believes the only way that you can attain that order is by everybody working together. And the problem with him is he also believes the only way to get everybody working together is to put them under one flag, the imperial flag. So in
Now, doesn't that sound familiar?
the yeah, only not consciousness, more like, okay, these planets can have their autonomy, but they need to feed the machine. And
Exactly.
if you're looking at the old canon, the old Legends books of Star Wars, you see Thrawn as that. Also, Jorah Sabath is in that book, and he is a great villain. Also, only his problem is he's a lunatic. He's actually physically crazy and insane, and he believes that his wisdom is the only wisdom, and that real power comes from control of people, not in how many worlds you conquer. He says I don't see a point in conquering worlds that you'll never visit again, or being in control of all these people that you'll never see face to face. He wanted personal control of people, so he'd take over their minds.
Again, that sounds so very familiar.
Well, it sounds to me like your villain is kind of an amalgam of a lot of different villains.
Amalgamation, but yes,
Well, an amalgam is,
in a way,
but so
that's
what?
kind of the
But
point.
if
But
he's several villains rolled into one, how does that make him the best? What makes it so unique if he's just taking all these other ideas?
well, he's unique in a lot of ways. First and foremost, like I said earlier, he's not out seeking revenge. He's not out seeking anything but to make the world better. Now, what would make him, I guess you could call it relatable in this sense, is in the earlier days when he was still known as Vorin Dagoth, he was tasked by his king, who he was great friends with, to protect this ancient artifact, which literally the still beating heart of a dead god. He was betrayed by the tribunal, who consisted of basically the entire race's wise man, Vivek, Indral Nerevar's wife, Almalexia, and his confidant, Sotha Sil. So they all betrayed Nerevar and Dagoth. They killed Nerevar outright, cut off his hands, feet, and face, and then sacrificed him in ways that are more deeply explained in lore books. And then what they did was they came and took the power of the Heart of Lorcan and threw Dagoth into a volcano and left him to die. Problem is, he had been in close proximity to the heart for long enough that he connected to it on a spiritual level. The heart never let him fully die, but it didn't bring him fully back to life either.
So
It kept him in this kind of limbo,
so
trapped
how do you bond with something spiritually that you're just in a proximity of?
because it's
That
the
seems
beating
like
heart of a dead god. He
yeah,
absorbed its power
that
just
just
by
seems like
proximity.
hand waving because I'm sure a lot of people were also in proximity of this that didn't.
No, they were
Power.
not. He was the
So,
only one there.
but how did all these other people get their power from it?
There were only three others, and they were very, very high ranking officials in Dunmer society.
And they got their power from the still beating heart, right?
Yes, they did. However, they used tools to basically siphon power into themselves to become living gods. He was close enough to the heart for a long enough time that he just kind of absorbed that divinity little by little, to the point where it didn't turn him into a god outright, but preserved him and kept him alive under molten lava for thousands of years in a constant cycle of dying and being reborn again and again and again, and all he could hear were the sounds of his own screams and the beating of the heart in his head.
Well, that sounds very grim dark.
Extremely, yes, and I'm not going to disagree with you.
Hmm.
Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of comparisons here, just to some popular villains.
Okay.
We'll start with Sauron. Sauron wants absolute order through domination. Individual freedom doesn't matter because everyone exists to serve him. He understands exactly what he's doing. Dagoth doesn't think he's creating slaves. He believes he is creating a family, a divine family, but a family nonetheless.
Mm.
That difference changes everything when you think about the two. One wants to rule with an iron fist, the other wants to rule with an open hand.
Yeah, but he's not really ruling with an open hand if he's forcing change on them, physical change into a mindless monster. I mean, he
Now,
doesn't.
he doesn't realize that because he believes full heartedly that what he's doing is saving them.
Uh,
Okay. Call it a fragment of madness within him, but at the same time,
your
he
time's
doesn't
almost up,
realize that
man.
he's destroying them.
Your time's
Yeah,
almost up,
that's partly your fault.
and you have. Well, I know, but I have to be able to rebuttal a little bit, right?
Oh, no, I agree with you, yes, but you did kind of go on a bit of a tangent.
Well, I did, but it deserved it. So I'll give you a little extra time though, because I want to ask that question that you kind of touched on. Most
Okay.
villains mirror your hero.
Yes.
And if you're playing a game like Morrowind, your hero can be very different every game, right? I
Yes.
mean, I've never played Morrowind, but I'm assuming it's like Skyrim where you get options, you get choices, and the game changes as you develop your character.
Right.
So how can he mirror you?
Well, Morrowind goes from having a great villain to telling one of the best stories in fantasy, period. The hero, the Nerevarine, isn't Dagoth Ur's opposite, he's his mirror. They're both tied to that ancient hero Nerevar. They both want to end the reign of the Tribunal. Both gather followers. Both are guided by divine beings through visions and dreams. Both stand before the heart of Lorcan with the ability to reshape history. And the difference is what they do when they reach it. Dagoth Ur believes the world can only be saved if one perfect being takes absolute control. The Nerevarine destroys the heart of Lorcan instead of claiming it. And that's the central question of Morrowind. If they have the power to become a god, would you trust yourself with it? Dagoth Ur says yes, and Nerevarine says no. That's why the ending is extremely powerful. You're not destroying a monster. You're confronting someone who, under different circumstances, could absolutely have been the hero. And the part that sticks with me personally, strong argument that Dagoth Ur is right about almost everything except his solution. The Tribunal did steal divine power. They really did build their civilization on deception. The Empire absolutely is exploiting and slowly colonizing the continent of Morrowind. The province of Morrowind. His diagnosis of the world's problems is very much correct, but his cure is catastrophic. That's what elevates him above these fantasy villains. He's not evil because he enjoys suffering. He's evil because he's absolutely convinced that suffering is necessary for salvation. Now, just to make things fun here, I'm going to go ahead and compare him to Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Try me.
Told you I was gonna. All right. Thrawn is one of fiction's greatest strategists. Every victory comes from observation, analysis, and flawless logic. If new evidence appears, Thrawn can adapt this because his worldview is built on reason. Dagoth Ur is the opposite. His strength isn't in strategy, it's in conviction. He cannot be persuaded because every miracle he performs reinforces his belief that he's chosen. Every follower confirms his faith. Every century spent fused to the heart convinced him he's not merely right, that he is divine. You don't defeat Dagoth Ur by proving him wrong. You defeat him by destroying the source of his certainty. That's why I think he's one of the greatest fantasy villains. Now, you can sway Thrawn by saying, hey, look at it this way. And if you can provide a good enough argument, he'll change his logic a little bit, if even to just come at the problem from a different angle. Dagoth stays the course because he believes he's being piloted by divinity.
So your hypothesis is that, or your thing is that because a villain can't change his mind, that makes him a better villain.
Not necessarily specifically that. I think he's a great villain because there is so much going on behind the scenes that really make him who he is as a villain. And as I said, he is not wholeheartedly lost. He actually greets the player character very politely and offers them the first strike when you finally do say, I have to end you. He says, very well, you may take the first attack. He is not insane in the classical sense, in that he has spent so much time in the presence of a divine artifact that it has warped him into believing something else. Whether that belief is misplaced or not is entirely up in the air. Because a lot of things in the Elder Scrolls are never fully explained. Look at the dwarves, look at soul gems, look at the soul cairn, look at all of that is in the series that is never fully touched on. Dagoth Ur is another one of those things.
Oh,
15 minutes really isn't enough time to go into the lore details here. That would really strengthen my arguments.
that's okay. Just listen, Mike, he's a good villain. I think you have yourself a very top tier villain. You have all the characteristics of somebody who's not necessarily so relatable, but the scariest kind of villains are the ones that you can't convince they're wrong. You're right on that. That no matter how much you try, they believe firmly they're doing the right thing. and they will burn down bridges to prove it. Some of the best villains are like that in just about any genre. The one
Absolutely.
the ones that literally stand on conviction, and it's not about power, it's not about profit, it's literally about conviction. Here's a good example: the Dominion in Star Trek. This is Deep Space Nine we're talking about. So
Never watched it, so you'll have to explain.
okay. So the Dominion is a faction. Like, you have the Klingons, you have the Federation, you have the Romulans. So the Dominion is a faction, but the Dominion is ruled by somebody called the Founders, which is basically a giant puddle, like a lake worth of shapeshifters. Each shapeshifter is like, a small amount of goo that can turn into a person or a bird or whatever. So
Sure.
the reason why they are great villains, though, is because they have a massive amount of distrust for people who are not like them. They can't handle solids because they feel like because they're stuck in one form, they limit themselves, and that all solids must look at them like they're deceitful because they can change shapes. And because of their limited experiences being very negative with solids, they become a not xenophobic race where they want to hide, but they decide that the only way that they're going to be able to protect themselves is to become the rulers of everybody, but not the rulers out in front, like, look at me, I'm so awesome, I'm the ruler. No, they do it from behind the scenes. They genetically engineer an entire army of a race called the Jem'Hadar that basically are ruthless killing machines. And then they genetically engineer another entire race called the Vorta, who are political masterminds, saboteurs, and and they act through these races. I mean, they do some of their own dirty work. I mean, you're shapeshifters, why not? But their conviction is very strong that solids can't be trusted, and we must do everything we can to rule them so that they can't hurt us. And that's also a very good villain in fantasy. Its conviction is a very dangerous thing. Now, do I think
Mhm.
this is the best villain of all fantasy? Probably not. I'm sure there's better ones out there. I'm sure there's ones that will captivate you more. But I'd say on our patented tier system, I think you got a dragon tier villain there, Mike.
Exactly. And the biggest thing I wanted to say. I don't think necessarily that he is the absolute objective best, but in my opinion, he is just the greatest in fantasy, and almost nothing can stand up against him as far as just how well rounded he is. He doesn't take the absolute best as even an evil god. There are others out there that are better, like Jubileus from Bayonetta.
Hmm.
Not that anybody would know that game, but still.
Well, game villains tend to be a little bit different breed. You know, they
Oh, for sure.
they're definitely a little different. All right, folks. This is going to conclude our lightning round. I think Mike did a pretty good job with his thesis. Mike, tell him how you came up with all that.
Well, I did some research on individual villains. I didn't get to talk about all the ones I wanted to talk about because of these stupid ass time restrictions, leading to me not even be able to mention that Vivek actually had a spear made from Molech Ball's penis. But at the same time,
Oh, folks, I saved you from all that. All right. My name is Tyson.
and my name is also Tyson.
No, it's
Or
not.
is it?
We are arguing with dragons, folks.
Have a good night, folks.